Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're going somewhere I honestly never expected we'd go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the family tree of Adolf Hitler.
Interesting.
So we've got excerpts from this Dutch text,
Oh, wow.
and it's all about his ancestry. And let me tell you,
Okay.
it is full of twists and turns.
I bet.
I don't think anybody would be able to guess what we're going to talk about today.
Well, we always focus so much on like the politics and the ideologies,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but family background really plays a huge role in shaping anyone.
Oh, absolutely.
Even someone like Hitler.
Right. And so that's why I think this is so fascinating, because we're not talking about his political beliefs here. We're talking about, like, did you know that his dad wasn't originally named Hitler?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's wild.
He was born Alois Schicklgruber in 1837.
Schicklgruber.
Yeah. His mother, Maria Anna Schicklgruber, was unmarried at the time.
Oh, wow.
Born out of wedlock, as they used to say.
Right.
Meaning she wasn't married to the father.
Right. So Alois gets his mom's last name because the biological father was unknown.
Yeah.
But then 5 years later, Maria Anna marries Johann Georg Hitler.
Okay.
And some people think that he's the dad.
Interesting.
But it gets weirder.
Okay, how so?
In 1876, so almost 40 years later,
Wow.
the name Schicklgruber is officially changed to Hitler.
Wow. Officially, like legally changed.
Yeah. A notary and a priest documented the whole thing.
That's pretty official.
Oh, yeah, you can imagine, like, the hoops they had to jump through back then to get that done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the paperwork alone.
It makes you wonder, what Alois thought about all this. Was he like, hey, I want this name change? Or was it his mom, like, orchestrating everything?
I don't know. We can't know for sure, but it does sort of highlight, the fluidity of surnames in that era, especially in rural Austria.
Right.
Even the spelling of Hitler wasn't always consistent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes it was Heidler or Hutler and a bunch of other variations.
Wow, so this name Hitler, I mean, it's become synonymous with just like hate and terror and, everything evil.
For sure.
Do you think the name itself, like, has power, or was it purely just the man?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to separate the name from the deeds now.
Right.
But what if he had stayed a Schicklgruber?
Yeah.
Would it have had the same impact? Would his propaganda have been as effective?
That's a good point.
You think about the impact of names and branding even in, the darkest of contexts.
Yeah, and so then you've got the meaning of the name Hitler, which is pretty ironic.
Oh, how so?
Considering, what he stood for.
Yeah.
Like, the name is thought to come from Hitler,
Yeah.
which means small farmer or shepherd.
Oh, wow.
So, like, someone living in a simple hut.
Right. Very humble.
Yeah, it's almost humble compared to, like, the image we have of him today.
Absolutely. A huge disconnect there.
So, okay, let's go back to Alois's father for a second.
Okay.
Was it Johann Georg Hitler, the guy who married his mom, or was there someone else?
Well, there's this theory that Johann Georg's brother, Johann Nepomuk Hitler, might have been the real father.
Okay.
It's never been definitively proven, but there's been a lot of debate about it.
So there's this potential family secret, and it's all tangled up with this, like, name change?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of mystery there.
And then you have to consider the region where all this is happening, the Waldviertel in Austria.
Right.
That's where both sides of Hitler's family were from.
Exactly. And that's where things take a really fascinating turn.
Okay.
You remember John Paul Mulders, the journalist?
Yes.
He did some genetic testing on Hitler's relatives.
Oh, wow.
And the results really challenge the traditional view of Hitler's ancestry.
Hold on. What did he find?
Well, the test showed that Hitler belonged to haplogroup E1B1B.
Okay.
Now, that's pretty rare in Germany and Western Europe.
Okay, so what's so special about that specific haplogroup?
Well, what's fascinating is that E1B1B is most common in North Africa.
What?
Yeah, it's found in a significant percentage of Berbers, Somalis, and even Ashkenazi Jews.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah.
So the man obsessed with Aryan supremacy might have had genetic ties to, like, the very groups he persecuted.
It's true.
That's mind-blowing.
It really is. And it reminds us that, genetics and ancestry are far more complex than these simple racial categories that Hitler and others tried to impose.
Can you explain a little bit more about, like, what a haplogroup is and how it connects us to our ancestors?
Sure. So basically, a haplogroup is a group of people who share a common ancestor way back in time.
Okay.
And by tracing these haplogroups, we can map out migrations and connections going back thousands of years.
Oh, wow.
It's like a genetic time machine.
So in Hitler's case, this throws a huge wrench into the whole narrative he tried to create about his own heritage.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you wonder, what would his reaction have been if he'd known about these genetic links?
I mean, it's impossible to know for sure.
Right.
It certainly raises some interesting questions about, his motivations and the foundations of his ideology.
Yeah. Wow, this is already so much more complex than I expected.
I know, right?
And we haven't even gotten to his siblings yet. And
Right.
from what I understand, his childhood wasn't exactly like, happy family dinners and holiday traditions.
It really wasn't, no.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. Out of his 6 siblings,
6 siblings, wow.
yeah, 3 brothers and 3 sisters, only 2 made it to adulthood.
Oh, wow.
His half-brother Elois Jr. and his younger sister Paula.
3 brothers and a sister died young. I mean, that must have been devastating for the family.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to wonder what kind of impact that had on a young Adolf.
It's hard to say for certain,
Hmm.
but it's definitely a significant factor to consider when we're trying to understand, his development.
All right.
And then you add the fact that, his relationship with Alois Jr. was very strained.
Okay.
And you start to see this pattern of, broken or distant family ties.
I remember reading that Alois Jr. became a cafe owner in Berlin.
Yeah, that's right.
Quite a different path than the one Adolf took.
For sure.
Was there like any rivalry between them?
It's certainly possible. I mean, siblings often compete for attention and resources.
Right.
And when you factor in, the potential resentment over the name change and the uncertainty surrounding Alois Kuscher's true paternity, it's not hard to imagine, some friction between them.
Yeah, definitely. And what about Paula, his younger sister? What do we know about her?
Paula lived a very private life. She stayed out of the public eye as much as possible.
Okay.
Not a lot is known about their relationship, but from what we can gather, it doesn't seem like they were particularly close.
So not exactly the picture of a loving, supportive family.
No, not really.
It makes you wonder how this lack of like strong family bonds might have influenced his worldview. Maybe contributed to his sense of isolation, maybe even fueled his ruthlessness.
That's a question that historians have debated for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible to draw a direct line from childhood experiences to, the horrors that he inflicted on the world.
Right.
But understanding someone's background can offer valuable insights into their motivations and their behavior patterns.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a puzzle. So you need all the pieces to see the full picture.
Yeah.
And in Hitler's case, those early family relationships are a crucial part of that puzzle.
Absolutely.
Mm.
We can't dismiss him as simply evil.
Right.
He wasn't born a dictator.
Right.
He was a child
Mhm.
who experienced loss and family conflict and possibly a very deep sense of uncertainty about his own identity.
Right. It's a good reminder that even the most notorious figures had a childhood, a time before, ideology and power took over.
Yeah.
It humanizes them in a way, even though it certainly doesn't excuse their actions.
Absolutely. It brings up a very difficult question.
Yeah,
How do we reconcile the personal with the political?
right.
How do we understand the human being
Yeah.
behind these monstrous acts?
It's a tough one, and there are no easy answers.
I agree.
But by exploring Hitler's family history, we can at least try to piece together a more complete picture of who he was and, gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped him.
Exactly. And before we move on, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The claims of Jean-Marie Laurey, the Frenchman, who alleged to be Hitler's illegitimate son.
Right. He claimed his mother had an affair with Hitler during World War I. It's a story that's captured the imagination of a lot of people.
Yeah, it has.
I mean, the idea of Hitler having a secret child, it adds another layer of complexity to his already controversial life.
And while DNA evidence has debunked Laurey's claim, it's important to acknowledge that there were rumors about Hitler's relationships with women even during his lifetime.
Yeah.
People were always curious about the private lives of public figures, especially someone as powerful and enigmatic as Hitler.
And it's interesting to me that, despite all the speculation, Hitler never publicly acknowledged having any children.
Yeah.
It makes you think about, his complex relationship with family and legacy.
Yeah, and it reminds us that even with all the research and analysis, there are still mysteries surrounding Hitler's life.
For sure.
There are gaps in our knowledge questions that may never be fully answered.
It's like we're peeling back layers of history,
Yeah.
but there's always another layer underneath.
Always.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's amazing to me how exploring someone's family history, even someone as infamous as Hitler, can really challenge our perceptions.
Oh, yeah.
You come in with certain assumptions and then suddenly
Yeah.
you're confronted with all these unexpected details
Absolutely.
that make you rethink everything.
It's true. Family history forces us to grapple with, the complexities of human nature.
Right.
How individual circumstances and historical forces all kind of intertwine to shape a person's life.
Right.
History isn't just about grand narratives and political ideologies.
Yeah.
It's also about the lives of ordinary people caught in extraordinary situations.
And in Hitler's case, those circumstances included a family background full of name changes, questions about paternity, strained relationships.
Right.
And then there's that incredible revelation about the E1B1B haplogroup, which, like we said, is more commonly found in North Africa than in Germany.
Exactly. That finding really throws a wrench into that whole concept of racial purity
Yeah.
that Hitler, so fiercely promoted.
Right.
It highlights the absurdity and the inherent flaws in those types of ideologies.
Yeah, it also underscores how interconnected